Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome to Astrology 2.0. It is Saturday morning, noon here in England. I have the usual crew together with us from all over the world, all the different frickin' time zones. Holy shit. Um, when we last met, shit was going insane. And we thought it had kind of reached a pinnacle, but you guys warned us, no, you ain't seen fucking nothing yet. And now we're back again to say, no, we didn't see anything yet because it has literally now reached like levels of insanity that are there's no words. There's no words. And before we jump in, I just give a little bit of a spiel here because we talked about the stuff about things going to get canceled. Now here in England, they canceled remember the 5th of November. The night of, like literally, I mean, they didn't even make a pretense of trying to make it not look like it was about that. They literally, at 1 minute after midnight, full lockdown in England happened on the 5th of November. And they made the announcement about the lockdown on the evening of Halloween, on the blue moon, the full moon, on All Hallows Eve. They make, because politicians work Saturday nights at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. They do regularly, all the time. They make the announcement. And Halloween was really interesting because while they didn't cancel Halloween, the media did a really good job of spinning it so that people thought it was canceled. People thought that they couldn't go send the kids out trick-or-treating. And it was really subtly done in such a way they didn't come out and outright say no trick-or-treating this year. But like in our neighborhood, there was no one. There was like 3-4 kids, tops. And we went across next door to our pub. And we're talking to the guy who runs the pub, who's a good friend of ours, and said, hey, so what's it normally like here for Halloween? He was like, this is filled. And we have a little green space park between us and the next street. And he says, it's usually wall-to-wall kids because it's a highly residential area, lots of young families. It's usually wall-to-wall. The houses are all decorated, everything. This year, nothing. Not a single house with a decoration out front. Hardly a kid on the streets. Absolutely nothing. And that was the thing. It wasn't banned, but they convinced people that it was. Keep people indoors on that day. It was crazy. And of course, now England's locked down till December 2nd. So they say, but the furlough has been reset. The government furlough, which is helping pay staff, has been extended to March. So it's like, oh, wait, okay, so the lockdown's supposed to end December 2nd, but they've extended furlough until March? Because that's not at all a statement of how long they expect this to go on, right? So
that's a statement of intent through and through.
It is a statement of intent through and through. We've got all of Europe has gone into lockdown. Now, interesting though in Europe is the terrorism is suddenly happening now, right? Terrorism. So there was an attack in Vienna, Austria, and it was like on the eve of the election, no doubt. Okay, on the eve of the U.S. election, there was this terrorist attack in Austria that took all the news in Europe, etc., and immediately England moved to the highest level of warning, standby, because they're expecting terrorists are going to happen here now. Oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. They got to increase the distraction. They have to increase the distraction. And you've got the whole thing with the U.S. politics right now. All anyone is talking about is this U.S. election. Why don't we know? We still don't know who's been voted in, blah, 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 blah. everyone's not talking about all these COVID lockdowns. They're talking about an election, which is, again, another huge fucking distraction. And that's global. Like, it's not just here in England. Everyone in Europe, I'm saying, it's continuous posts about the US elections. No one's talking about the shit that's actually going on. So distract. Chaos and mayhem. Lockdowns happening everywhere. Warnings of already telling people that, oh, Christmas this year, that turkey farmers have been ordered to grow smaller turkeys so that people aren't encouraged to buy like a 10-kilo turkey and then have all their friends over to eat it. No, you must have just small turkeys. So just small families will get together. No friends, no big celebrations. This kind of idiocy. Liverpool, they've decided they're going to test the entire city. And I just got, it was posted in the Unfuckers group as well, a notice from a private school in Liverpool that put out, and if you read what it says they're testing the entire school next week, staff and students. The fact of actually says normally we would ask for parental consent, but unfortunately, due to the nature of this, we will not be able to ask for parental consent. With a statement of, let me see, do I still have it open? Yes, I do. If positive results are received, the school will secure the individual concerned. And in the case of students, inform parents, carers immediately, and we'll then operate our usual process of identifying others who may have to be in contact and self-isolation. But secure the students. Is this the beginnings of, again, what we knew and we got notices of, saying that they're going to lock down students and, like, you know, spend 2 weeks in the school camping out because you're not allowed to go home because you're COVID positive? So that's playing out in Liverpool here in England. All the insanity you could possibly want. So, my darlings, that was my little entry into the rant of insanity fucking. The people are not happy. The people are not happy.
You know, Danny, I've been saying this all year on all the various places where I say things, and it has to get to this point of just utter blatant overreach for the majority of people to stop just drinking the media Kool-Aid.
Yep.
It has gotten absolutely ludicrous in terms of the media. And people just, oh, it's gospel. No, it's not. Like, this is a bot-biased opinion. And in every realm, the overreach is getting so blatant, and it's going to escalate. It's going to get crazier, but that's what we need in order to break through it. Because right now, it looks like the end game is really dark and sinister, and I don't think we actually go there.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be like one of those, like, at the last minute, we're going to just, whew, and it's going to keep amping up until then. And I don't want to get too much into the politics. I just want to toss two things that kind of have been going through my mind as I've been watching the insanity down there unfold. Someone asked me, if you were an astrologer advising these people, what would you do? And I thought about it, and I was thinking about how the moon was going to go out of bounds right after the moon crossed Donald Trump's North Node and the transiting North Node. And just, he has a strong, I'm not for or against either one of them. However, Donald Trump has a really positive thing going on in his chart. But then the moon went out of bounds, which is just insanity. I probably would have recommended not to give a win while people were so up and triggered because of the riots. So there could be an intentional delay. But then if you look at it from another angle and you look at all the weird timing that you just can't say that these people don't use astrology and other, occult methods. Why do the Democrats always use Saturn timing? Why is that? To me, looking at it like a game, because it is a game, it looks like they're going for a Saturn steal. That's how it looks to me. Mercury is in a vulnerable position because it just slowed down to change position, and it's doing it in square to Saturn. So Saturn has the strong upper hand. You know, that's information, restriction. You know, we've got a square to Neptune with the node. So this is all about the media fuckery. And I honestly think like they're trying to go for a steal because I think the end game is to try to get Harris in office. And I think Joe Biden is the old white dude that everybody's comfortable and familiar with. Even if, you know, it's not what you want, people tend to feel comfortable with the patterns and the familiar. Nobody's going to vote in a woman. I'm not even saying I want her to win. It has nothing to do with if she's a woman or not, but she does seem pretty in line with some of these globalist agendas. It's obvious. But they know nobody will vote for her, so we're going to put Biden in, pull Biden out, and then Harris comes up. That's what my gut says. Don't think it's going to pan out that way, but I think that's what they're trying. If that makes sense. That's my election blurb.
Yep. So, I mean, and this is it. The rumors are flying, and unfortunately, when we talk about the election itself, the rumor mill has gone into complete overdrive. And it's now no longer just the media. We always point our fingers at the media does this, the media's done that, they've done this, they've done that. But the people themselves are spreading so much rumor, spreading so many things that they are creating their own distractions. It's for example, in the States, everyone's like, COVID just doesn't even fucking exist anymore. It's all about the election. 100%, it's all about the election. And that is all any single person in the States is pretty much talking about is election fraud, election this, election that. And all these, and I'm going to call them theories because not a single one of these watermarked ballots and blockchain registration, not a single one of these things has been proven. Not even slightly. But it's spreading. And as it spreads, it's the people themselves are creating these waves of distraction. But the things that are being said, I agree with you, Megan. It is now so in your face that, for example, all this theoretical shit that's being put out, these people making shows about U.S. elections, secret watermarks, and blockchain registration, all the rest of it. When that is proven to be bullshit, and it will be proven to be bullshit, it will be. When it's proven to be bullshit, those people who have perpetuated this are going to be, their name's going to be mud. Their name is going to be like, it's going to be like, well, you were completely wrong. That didn't play out. And if that was true, they would have used that weapon, so to speak, to push this. The transparency is so crystal clear right now in so many things across the board that I think you're right. I think this is like that wake up point of what you guys all said, that it's going to have to get really fucking bad. It's going to get really, really bad, because that is the only way to get people shake up their programming. You've got to put things that are so in their face that they can no longer ignore it. And that's what I see right now. It is shocking, some of the stories that are coming out.
You're going to feel it too, not just see it. If you think of the astrology as it's going to unfold. So we just had a crazy full moon conjunct Uranus. Okay. So now we're in the bottom half of the moon cycle. So the moon's going to get dark, and it's going to get dark in Scorpio. So this can get really dark and really heavy. People might feel the loss of hope. If we try to go into the hope in the Sagittarius, well, that's where the trap lies right now, because there's a south node. That's why you're seeing everybody divide into all these beliefs. Anybody that's towing the line by, I believe this, you're wrong. You have to find that center. You have to look for the facts and the information from a neutral, unbiased point of view. That's that's the way to go right now. And it's really hard not to, because it's easy to fall into the south node. So after we get that, then we're going to go hot and heavy into eclipse season. We're going to be ejected. That's the way I'm looking at it. We're going to be ejected out of the eclipse season on a total solar eclipse, really tightly conjunct the south node. The moon's going to go out of bounds again. And then it's going to be like boom, 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 boom. I just see it as like these series of steps unlocking. We're going to, let me just, where is it? You're going to have Venus switch and Chiron go direct. You're going to have Saturn switch signs. You're going to have Jupiter switch signs. You're going to have Mercury switch signs, conjunct the sun on the solstice. And then you're going to have the grand conjunction in Aquarius at the solstice. And I don't know why, because it's Aquarius energy. You can't really say it's going to be actually this, because Aquarian is too, you know what I mean? Like you can't pin it down. Whenever I look at this though, I keep getting, for anybody that's familiar with tarot, the judgment card, I get the image of the angel with the trumpet. When I see Mercury coming in with the 0 degree point of the solstice with the sun in Capricorn, and this is a sign where we just had everything, you know, all this dismantling is starting in Capricorn realm. It's like, this is like the herald that the heroes return. It's like the herald of the return of the hero. I keep hearing that. And that's the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. What kind of hero it is, I don't know. I'm hoping it's all we find the hero inside ourselves and we stand up and we're like, enough of this fuckery.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because it's too Uranian influenced, you know. But I just see that it gets just dark and crazy. The way that I explain it's almost like, you know, when like manic depressive energy and you go to the really highs of the mania and then you drop really low. I feel like we're about to drop and then we're going to shoot up again, but then we're going to start like plateauing into these heights. And I know that's weird, a plateau into the heights, but that's how I feel it's going to be. And I do feel it gets better. And I do feel that there is going to be forms of revolution and they're trying to gear everything into civil war to throw us off, because you can't stop energy. You can only try to redirect it.
Transmute it into some way.
That's what I think is going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. To like turn it against us, because they're like, no, like we can't hand it. Well, yeah, you kind of gotta.
Yeah, you kind of got.
It's got to dawn sometime.
Yeah.
No, you're totally right. I mean, we've got so many changes happening and so many starts of new cycles, like new synodic cycles. Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, right on the winter solstice on the 21st of December. But we've just had this train wreck of everything in Capricorn with all the squares from Mars, particularly Mars this year. So it goes retrograde every 2 years. So it's been in Aries for 6 months. Usually Mars stays in a sign for 6 weeks, and it's just ground us down to an absolute halt. So usually Mars in its own sign of Aries has got a lot of energy and a lot of push forward, and it's been the complete opposite in terms of energy levels and absolute exhaustion.
Absolute
from
exhaustion.
Everything this year. And it's absolute exhaustion and weird inflammations and weird rashes, and it rules the blood, it rules the headaches, it rules war and conflict.
Yeah.
And it's just ground to a halt.
It's
just
a stagnant feel. There's a stagnant feel right now.
Yeah. And it's peaking, so it's just about to go to direct.
Oh, I fucking hope so, because holy shit. We talked about this here in our house. On the 5th of November, we had friends come over. And we had a great earlier part of the afternoon. It was great. You're chatting, you're talking, etc. We were planning. We took all the fire poi gear out, went over to the park, did all the fire poi and fire staffs. 5th of November, you got to pull out the fire. But around 4 o'clock, I got hit, and it was like it literally like someone pulls the plug and the energy just drains completely out of you. And I had some pumpkin soup on the stove. I was like, let's have something to eat, something to ground us out. And the rest of the evening was great. And we went and did all fire poi and everything. Had lots of fun. But then by about 10 o'clock at night, it was like everyone was exhausted, and there was no words for it. Nick said it was like gravity was 3 times heavier, pulling you down. Like just to move was like, oh, and it has remained like that since the 5th of November. It has been this heavy energy, exhaustion, but not, it's just even mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, physical exhaustion across the board. And I've spoken to so many people who've said, like, they've just, yesterday, how many people I talked to, because I got nothing accomplished yesterday. I mean, I made dinner. That was my big accomplishment for the day yesterday. And it wasn't even a great dinner. Because it was just cutting up vegetables took every ounce of energy that I had. And I spoke to a ton of people all across the place. So it wasn't just England. It was like people, friends in Canada, friends in the States, friends in Australia, friend of mine in Japan, same thing, going, I'm just wrung out.
That's what
Wrung out
Mars
is, I think, the
like
best word.
When Mars is retrograde and it starts to slow down because it's reaching its stationary point, that's exactly what it does. So it's like Mars goes forward, we feel energetic, we feel like we've got energy, power to do things, you know, that kind of physical energy that you need to get things done, and that kind of focus and drive. So then when it goes retrograde, we notice it because it stations first. So we feel like this massive shift. But once it starts to pick up speed in the retrograde motion, all we feel is this frustration, the headaches, all kinds of the type of I can't move forward. I can't, you know, you can't even let go and go backwards. It's not even like that. You just feel like you need
stagnation.
You know, multiple naps. But we're getting to that point. We're getting to that point where it's slowing down again, but it's slowing down backwards. When it slows down backwards, this is exactly what you've described. It's even more accentuated to the point where it stands still. So it's coming to its standstill point this week, and it's really like, might as well not do anything and wait for it to go forward kind of feeling.
It's kind of, you just want to shoot out of the gate, but you can't. There's the tension.
Exactly.
The tensions are rising, and you can see that everywhere this week. I think Dawn said in the States, particularly around the election, it's just, it's reaching a bubbling point. So it goes direct on the 13th or the 14th, but it's at 15 degrees. It's at 15 degrees now, but it takes a while to speed up. So on the day of the election, Mercury just turned direct.
Yeah.
But it was slow. It's not going anywhere. So there's no communication, there's no movement. We don't know what's going to happen with the election, and it's going to be that way for a little while until it speeds up and picks up.
It's kind of funny because Aries rules the head and Mars is retrograde in Aries, and Mercury rules thinking. So can you imagine when you retrograde, there's
both
those two planets, those inner planets, and one rules your thinking and your communication, and it's going retrograde in Scorpio and then into Libra. And in Libra, you're trying to think a balanced mind, but you can't, because when Mercury's retrograding, you're kind of stuck, like which way? I can't think. I'm not sure where I'm going. Is it this way or is it that way? And the elections are really kind of proving that, you know, like, is it him or is it him? You know, there's this, nobody knows what's going on, because two polarities is kind of like Libra scales, and nobody knows which one it is. And then Mars going retrograde at the same time, and they're both slowing down to station around the same time. And Mars rules the head, and it's like those headaches, the heavy headaches, the ones that you need to go lie down, and you feel like it's you know, the tension, the blood and the pressure points. That's the kind of headache.
Yep.
And it's those two happening at the same time. You can't talk, you can't communicate, you can't act, you can't do. You're stuck in this limbo until it all goes forward again. But luckily, we're moving beyond it real soon. But right now, for the rest of this week, it's icky.
Yeah.
And don't
Yes,
forget the squares too. Mars still has more squares.
That's right. That's right. But we've had those major squares to Capricorn, the cluster fucking Capricorn, as we'll call it, with Pluto and Jupiter.
Yeah, both of them.
But
Both of them are squaring.
it'll pass those again, but then it'll be out of the gate.
So Mercury's
Can I
been
present a
squaring
theory when you got
Capricorn from Libra. Mercury's squaring to Capricorn, so it was having a Saturn square, and then Aries is having like this Pluto square, Pluto Jupiter square, and it's just like, oh God, can we move forward? Like, no, we're reaching that point where, remember I was talking a while back about that boil and how it bursts? Well, this is that point where the skin's still not healed, and it's just like, oh, come on, like,
it's throbbing. It's throbbing. If you've ever had a boil like that, before it gets to the burst stage, it throbs because the pressure has built up so intensely, and that's where it feels like we are right now. Where the pressure is so intense, you feel it right here in my head, right there. It's got to burst. It's got to drain.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure for that burst to come. Like, I feel like the masculine energy, and when I say masculine, I don't necessarily mean males. I just mean that masculine energy in the universe, which is represented by Mars, right? And if you think about it, Mars and Venus don't retrograde together often. It's not like a yearly thing. They don't always sync up. And they did right after we had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So it reset that cycle. The last cycle was in Libra. So about, the feminine and the masculine being in balance and unity rather than, a hardcore matriarchy or a hardcore patriarchy. So I feel like the feminine has already had their elevation earlier this year with the retrograde. So we've been, the feminine energy has been cleared out and elevated up into this new Saturn Capricorn cycle that we're in, but the masculine hasn't done it yet. So all the energy that's neutral or feminine is waiting for the forward thrust energy, which can't move forward right now because it's being pulled back into that stop. And we're just waiting, saying like, get the fuck up. Like, we need you to get up, because if we are going to go against this patriarchal bullshit, we have to do it together. The two, look at any situation right now. I'm going to use in my own community, because that's what the North Node wants us to do. We need to look at what's going on in our own environments, right? So we're having fishery issues with the commercial fishermen versus the First Nations fishermen. Big time, like to the point that like they are like setting fucking boats and buildings on fire, and the DFO is like do. I am seeing parallels of how the patriarchy has, repressed the feminine and wounded the masculine for like generations and centuries. It's rippling through everything. So here, the feminine would be representative of the First Nation. It's that energy that's been suppressed because it is in tune with the natural. It is, open to receive and work in harmony rather than to push forward. The masculine, and when I talk like this, I'm not saying this is all about like feminism. Like, I'm saying both sides have been fucked equally. It's just the masculine was given a bone. Master's favorite dog is still a dog, right? And that's the way it's been through the patriarchy. Like the masculine has like, we'll just throw you this bone and you just be quiet. And we're just going to we're going to burn all these women as witches. And the men that speak out, we'll burn them as heretics. You be quiet. Here's your bone. You go over here. That's been the distraction. So here, the masculine representative would be the commercial fisheries, who are, no, we're not racist. It's about the molting season. And then they're burning down natives, like in their boats and their vehicles and their, and why aren't you going against the capitalism? Why aren't you going against the Capricorn? Why aren't you going against like Clearwater that's pillaging the seas? That's what needs to be done on a mass scale. The two sides need to unite in the middle and go against everything that's falling, because it's teetering and we just need to push that tower over. That's what all these squares have been about. And it's like we're waiting for that masculine to be like, just get up. Like, that's how I feel it.
I'm more like into this whole bigger picture of like cycles that go back hundreds and hundreds of years, because that's what I'm following. Like I see these concentric circles, and every time an aspect hits one of those points in those circles, we see this pattern unfolding, this massive, massive story that goes back hundreds of years, over 1,000 years. And I find it really fascinating because it's completely accurate. I mean, like if you've got a conjunction of two planets in a year and it's hundreds of years ago, like the dates that we have of history are easy to look up and find out what happened. And although sometimes it's not exactly happening on that date or even that month, sometimes not even in that year, but because when planets come together, especially these big outer planets that weren't even discovered at that time, it still shows the big story. And I've got like chapters and chapters of this story, and I can see exactly what's going to happen with these big chapters and how this book is going to end and what cliffhangers coming and what's going to move forward, because it's been repeated, except each time it repeats from a circle, these concentric circles trigger something else, and then it moves to the next level, and then it cycles out until we've received like 4 cycles in a set, which is like 4 chapters of a book, which becomes part 1, part 2, part 3, etc. And then you get book 1, book 2, book 3, volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. And all of these all say the same thing. So like it's exactly in the pattern of history. So whatever historians tell you, you can verify it with astrology. Sometimes they say things and they make the victor look like he's the one who's been doing all the great stuff. And then you look it up and you're like, okay, that wasn't much. Like for instance, Rome in the UK, Rome in Britain. So we got this Rome in Britain, and it sort of started through some sort of just wanting to take over the whole of Europe and wanting to take over the world. And they enter Britain, and then they realize they're going to fight these Britons, and the Britons are really tough warriors, and they're going to fight back. And then a series of events, and we get this Roman Britain history. And then we don't get told hardly anything about how the Romans left and what they left. And yet, if you follow the astrology,
or why they left,
you can see exactly what happened. They left, and you can see why they left it out of history, because you can see exactly which cycle they were on when they went in, and which cycle phased out when they went out, and you can tell exactly why they left. Like they didn't do a good job. It was terrible. Their administration of the UK was absolutely terrible. Britain wasn't thriving under the Romans. It was losing everything, and they weren't getting anywhere with it. So they kind of cower away and leave. And things, you can tell because like this current Jupiter-Pluto cycle is reflecting part of that. So if we look at Jupiter and Pluto in its different types of aspects, we can see like wealth growing and wealth falling apart. And then we look at the Jupiter-Saturn cycles inside that cycle, and then we can see exactly how people who rule the economy and the people who are running the show are reacting as well. So you can see exactly what happened, and you can verify it because the next pattern is there and the next pattern is there, and you can make notes. If you're a historian, you should study astrology, because astrology is something that can give you extra data. So what I'm looking at are these huge pictures of stories that are unfolding, so that I can find out exactly what's coming in the future. Because this Friday, the 13th, we got a Pluto Jupiter conjunction, and in December on the 21st we've got a Jupiter Saturn conjunction. So that makes this year extremely important for historical purposes. So this is a year in history for a really big picture of like 1,200 years, an 800-year cycle, a 400-year cycle, a 200-year cycle, and these 20-year cycles. And then we've got a 270-year cycle. It's just, you can see exactly, if you look at all the history, what happened. Like sometimes like a chapter begins on this date. So let's say it begins on like the year 1005 or something. And for 20 years, you've got an unfolding of a pattern. There might be a really important historical happening in that 20 years that reflects that pattern, usually at the beginning of that pattern. So in the first 3 to 5 years or so, you see like a manifesting of this incident, whereas the small incidents that built it up began on the day of the conjunction, but then the small incidents built it up into something that grew out of that. So like, for instance, our 20-year cycles of money, like we're in 2020, so this is one of the marker years. So the year 2000 was another, and you go back 1980 was another. So if you look at 1980, 1981, the banking system has moved to computers. So now the information is not stored in paper and writing and files in offices. It's all done on computers. And then you move to the year 2000, and you can see that we're using like ATMs a whole lot more. ATM machines, digitalization, starting to move into online banking. So 2020 is the next level. So if you go back to 1960, we can see like in that 20-year cycle, we moved the backing of what is financial to us. Like the economy was not backed by solid metal anymore, like gold or silver. It's actually taken off, and then it's put into the debt system at that point. So we've got like fiat money, and then we go into computerization of the filing, and then we go into digital money, the first stage, and digital money, the second stage. And you can just see, because like you can go all the way back, because what were the Romans doing in ancient Britain? They were minting gold coins. Before there were any gold coins in the UK, in ancient Britain, the Romans came in and they minted gold coins. And there's very low quality gold in the UK. So they imported gold, they minted it in the UK, and they had gold coins. But when they left, the coins had finished. There was only very few left. They didn't mint anymore. So that was the exact end of a cycle on the astrology. They left, and people had to mint silver instead because they didn't have any gold to mint. So they'd already started using coins. And then in the next cycle, it's the Knights Templars, and they write write loans, and it's exact dates.
Yeah,
you can see these exact dates. So like they loaned King John, who wants to bail out some of the he wants to pay the French for the hostage soldiers that they've got, and they're asking for ransom. So he's taking a loan from the Knights Templars, small loans at that point, to ask them if they can loan the money because of this issue. He wants his soldiers back. And then once he pays that, like the next level is you've got the Venetian banking, and you've got the banking families of Italy. And then the next cycle, in that cycle, they all eat each other up until you've got just the Medici family left, and then the Bank of the Vatican, the Rome Bank, and only the Medici family is involved in that. And then you see the next cycle, the bank is bankrupt in Rome. So the Vatican Bank has been bankrupt by Pope, I don't know, Gregory or something. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
And then the next cycle, we're all moving to that banking system. So then it's all going to be loans and similar system. And you've got all these cycles. So you can see exactly what's going to happen in the future just by looking at the past. Just going back long enough and far enough to see exactly the sort of patterns
be able to
that
recognize.
happen.
You have to back out to see the whole pattern.
Picture,
you can't look
Yeah,
like this because you miss
definitely.
the pattern. You have to back out so you can see it all out as one large pattern.
Like you
When
can't
you
just
start-
focus on 2020 and the elections, for instance, to see this bigger picture. You've got to go all the way back to 1766, 17, yeah, that's the right date, right? And beyond to see what is unfolding in 2020. So that's like, it's a huge amount of like data to go over, but it is fun, like, because you're digging deeper into the rabbit holes of the astrology.
Yeah, astrology is definitely a priori-based science. So it's based on historical cycles. And interesting fact, I'll throw out a few. So Jupiter, Pluto are the money planets. So you're talking about the Jupiter, Pluto cycles, and they happen every 12 to 13 years. So the last one happened in 2008. We had a major crash in 2008, and now we've got one again in 2020. What's happened this year, which is quite rare, is that those conjunctions only happen once, but in 2020 it happened in 3 times. So it first happened in April, and then at the end of June, and then this final one is going to be this month, next week, essentially on the 14th. So that's the last and final one for the series for the next 12 to 13 years. But then when you pull out and you look at more than 2 planets in a cycle, you look at 3 planets in a cycle. And I was looking at the last time Saturn was in Aquarius, Uranus was in Taurus, and Pluto was in Capricorn. And that was in 1770. And that was the start of the Boston Tea Party. And the Townsend Acts came in. So we had the Revenue Act come in, the Indemnity Act come in, the Commissioners of Customs Act come in. So basically that was a revenue raising system to keep governors and judges in power, particularly at that time. So we're coming to that cycle again. So that could just be dismantled this time.
The date wrong. It's 1776, right? I said 1766. Maybe there's something to look into.
No, you're right, because 1776 is Jupiter, Pluto, but when you pull it out to 3 planets in a cycle, it's just a larger cycle again.
Actually, what I was talking about earlier was really Jupiter, Pluto. Sorry, Jupiter, Saturn. Jupiter, Saturn. Those cycles, those conjunctions are also about money, but in a different way. It's
a social construct.
And the social acceptance of it.
We've been in Earth, that's been about money.
Yep.
It's the Earth part of it that's been the money and how we spend money and how we use money, because that has a pattern through all of these as well. So I looked at every Earth chapter, and it was always about money. And now I looked at and it was also about change. Every institution of rulership has fallen at the end of the Earth cycles. So we're not looking into the future like the elites are the same people. They change, like how the Romans just disappeared, they just phased out. They just sort of left with their tail between their legs. And there was a whole like void of who's going to run everything now. I mean, it took a while for the Normans to... Yeah, but it wasn't, nobody knew what was really going on. Even then, it's like the whole system came down in one form and it had to be picked up again in a whole new way. So although we entered a big cycle, a small cycle ended. And so what we've got now is this big cycle ending and a small cycle ending, both at the same time, which I find fascinating. I know it's really tough living in this day and age, but I can feel why I'm born at this time and no other time. It's probably the worst time to be born, but I'm pretty sure like the whole experience was something that I chose. I don't know about you guys, but because only that this was a time when shit is happening, really big shit is happening. And yeah, I mean, everyone's witnessing it, but what we're seeing is something like what John Titor, the so-called time traveler, was talking about in his posts, but of a different year. He was talking like how there's a civil war in America and everybody has to pick up the pieces from scratch, and all the different members of society were living in collaborate sort of like collectives of people, and everybody had to work from like plowing the land and everything. It's that kind of story. Like, I just don't see democracy being taken forward. I don't see the current state of capitalism being taken forward. I don't see democracy being taken forward. I don't see anything like communism being taken forward either. I don't see any of that. I see a radical shift from that kind of centricism of thought, and it really becoming like a whole level of, well, none of that worked. None of it worked. Like, does it matter who is going to be president right now? No, because everything is going to change. Who cares? There's no need for a president in this. Whoever it is might be the last president, if there's going to be one. But if there is a president, it is a president of a system that's going to crumble anyway, regardless of whether there is one or not.
And that's the interesting thing, right? Because we just talked about transparency. We talked about how everything, whatever it is, whether it's, say, so like the narrative gets put in front of you. So COVID gets put in front of you as a narrative, and it's being fully exposed for the bullshit that it is. Same thing we talk about financial systems. They get put in front of you, and then they're just being fully exposed for what they are. When we talk about democracy, last week's on Fucker's discussion, I called it the death of democracy. And if we look at the American election, is this not exact transparency that democracy is dead? That democracy doesn't work. The entire concept is being exposed fully right now to show the gross fraud and the not this election, but all elections. So we're here getting things like, for example, the voting machine that was used in this state, which has now been proven to have been tampered with, was used in 20 other countries for their national elections. When you realize that, okay, well, there's a back door been hacked into this where they can alter votes, etc. Oh, look, well, that was the same one was used in this country, this country, this country, this country. So, whoa. That transparency is being blown open on every level. And that one narrative, just that one of governance, right? What is going on? All levels of government are being exposed right now, showing their corruption, showing the fact that they are not for the people, by the people, not even slightly, showing the fact that they're all on the take for something, that they're never working for the better or best interests of the country or the people of the countries. They're all being exposed.
Well, that's the thing, Danny. Capricorn rules governing. It rules those systems of government and control. And with all these outer planet activities that we've had in this area, anything that is in the lower vibration of Capricorn, so, corruption, anything that's not in integrity, it has to fall. It is not supported going forward. Like ever since January, anything that is corrupt and not in integrity does not stand. And we're seeing all this corruption coming to the surface because all these things are collapsing and these people don't want to, get rid of their power. So they're grasping and they're looking for scapegoats like, COVID or election fraud. It's all about trying to keep it going on the life support. When Amina was talking, it was making me think about Regulus. We have to remember, like, these fixed stars mark really long cycles of time. And we have been in fixed star in Regulus and Leo for a long time. So we've been a world that has been kingdom led. Now we're in Virgo. This isn't about like kingdoms and monarchies and governing systems leading the people. This is about the people rising up together in the age of Aquarius, the collective, to serve humanity in a united way.
Yeah, the micro and the macro are really like important when you look at astrology. Like, I don't see the point of like finding out through astrology what's going to happen for the next month, when the next month is really part of the bigger picture of the next year and the next 10 years and the next 100 years, etc. So you got to really go back to go forward. And you like what I see is like when like in the US, you got this left and right. Okay, the left and right, they bicker and banter about everything all the time, but it doesn't really matter which one gets in power. The people don't benefit at all. And in the UK, you've got the Conservative and the Labour Party. You've got other parties as well that have not come into power.
But
when you have the
exactly.
Conservative Party and then people voted Labour in, what were they expecting? They were expecting a huge change, a huge shift. But at the end of the day, what did you get? You got the same, the people were treated in the exact same way, because it is the corporations that actually decide what they're going to do once the power. So if the Green Party, for instance, was voted in, it wouldn't change anything at all. They may have all of this long list of like, this is what we're going to do, but once they get into power, they find out, oh, we can't actually do, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of what our promises were, because this company is going to leave the economy and that corporation is going to pull out and do their own thing. And we're not going to have any money. We're not going to have any economy. So what is the bottom line here? Everything is ruled by money. And because everything is ruled by money, it's the banking system as a whole that is this whole picture that is the Capricorn that's coming down. It isn't the particular modem of like which party, because every ethos and every idealism basically is not going to do anything that they declare, because they can't, because they are ruled by who gives them money. And it's not even necessarily corruption that's doing it. It's the exact system they can't move out of. So
it's how the system was set up to begin with. That system was set into, so it's built on a platform. And you're expecting them to it's the platform. The platform itself is there. Therefore, they're working within that box, if you will. Okay, so Amina, I've got a question for you. Given everything that you've just said about cycles and how we see these repeating cycles playing out through history, if you could pick one cycle of time, so to speak, to represent where we are now, what era, what time scale would that be, in your opinion? Like that most mimics kind of how we're seeing all of this shit interplay.
First of all, there is no one time exactly like this time, because I can pick one cycle of one of the aspects of this time, but I can't pick anything exactly like this time, because we are living in one of the biggest times ever. Yeah, but I can give you examples.
Give us
somebody
some
else
examples.
talk while I go read my notes. Okay,
Jules, jump in here, because I want to hear.
Come up with something.
I'm going to jump in.
Good.
I'm reading the chat, and Dawn's calling up arms, going, "When's this shit going to end? We're going to stand up right now and fight. What's going on?" There's another cycle that I've been looking at, and this is a Saturn-Uranus cycle. So it's a 45-year cycle. Our current cycle started in 1988. It goes until 2032. We're coming up to the second square, the waning square right now, between 2020 and 2022. So going back to basics, Saturn is form, structure, authoritarianism, doing the right thing, going about things the right way, complying to the rules. Uranus, on the other hand, is breaking the rules. It's freedom, it's revolution. And those two are squaring off right now. And that's going to be the theme for 2021, mostly. So we're coming out of Capricorn, we're going into Aquarius, but we've still got Uranus in Taurus. Uranus stays in Taurus for about 7 or 8 years. So next year will be the theme of people rising up in terms of this system is definitely crumbling. It creates a crisis in people's minds, and also socially, that this system is not working. And that's when we'll probably see a lot more change coming into next year. So we've got the final conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn. They're not going to meet again for about 12 or 13 years. We've got Saturn and Pluto, which happened in January. They're not going to meet for another 33 plus years. So this stuff will end it will change, but next year I think we'll see a lot of people just wanting that change and driving that change at a ground level.
And I think that's what we've been going through this year, is the lead up to that. Like what Megan said, it had to get so bad, it had to get so in your face to lead people to that point of being able to clearly see it for what it is, and to be able to then make a choice, make a stand, and say, no, 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 no. It was never going to be an easy journey. It was never going. It's you know, like, was they say the expression is darkest before the dawn.
Danny, you know what really fucking grinds my gears? When people talk about, oh, we're ascending, and they think it's like, and then you're there. What happens when you're on a plane? What is like the roughest part of the, like when you take off and you have to push against, you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's what we're doing right now. Ascending isn't easy. It's when you grip on the fucking seat and you're like, holy shit, am I going to get up there? And that's what we're going through. And just tying into what Jules was saying about the square that's coming up in January, when you look at the nuances, I think it's really interesting because we had the Saturn Pluto conjunction in January, but it didn't activate until March, when, you know, Mars came over and crossed that point. So Mars will make its third square to Saturn of the, like, you know, with the retrograded head, the 1, 2, 3. So the third one, while it's in the Aquarius Taurus energies, the sun is going to be exact on 22 degrees Capricorn. That's exactly where the Saturn Pluto conjunction is. So this is that push against, like, okay, like, we're standing up, how are we doing this? And then a week later, when you have the exact Uranus-Saturn conjunction, Mars will be with Uranus. So this is the people saying, how are we going to do it better going forward? Because Saturn wants to rebuild the new structure, because the old structure is getting demolished by Pluto. So Saturn and Jupiter are in Aquarius trying to build the new. Aquarius is new, Saturn is the architect. But Uranus in Taurus is saying, you can't forget the Earth. You can't forget what has value and needs to be woven into this structure. We're going to go into a really super AI world, but we can't, like, part our humanity. Like, we can't leave that at the door. We can't leave nature at the door. We have to be able to fuse them going forward. And I think that's like a super long game thing, but I do think Uranus and Taurus is going to remind Saturn of what needs to be, like, built into these new structures. And the people are going to push for it.
Okay, I got the cycle details, multiple tabs open and some notes. So I'm going to go for the Saturn-Jupiter cycle. They meet every 20 years, but every 200 years or so, they change element. So over 800 years, they cover 4 elements. So in order to find where we are in the cycle that's parallel to the last time this 2020 happened with the Jupiter-Saturn cycles, we have to look at the end of the last Earth cycles where Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct each and every year for 200 years, each and every 20-year cycle for 200 years in Earth signs, to find out what it means when we conjunct in the next element, which is air, and see the 800-year pattern that runs through from Earth to Earth again. So what we're closing out is an 800-year cycle. How the 800-year was at just prior to the switch was King John. King John was he had his band of spies all over the country, and none of the barons and the lords could do anything. He was demanding heavy taxes from each of them for their lands and any produce that was created by them on their lands. So he was building up the coffers of the palace or the state, but these guys were losing out big time and were making complaints. So in the year 1215, they want to bring the Charter of the Magna Carta. So in 1215, now the last time that we had Earth cycle ended around 1206, and exactly at 1203, King John was getting desperate for money. So you can see that the power is starting to fall. He hasn't got money. He needs money because money has become the thing. The gold coins that were set up in the gold and silver coins that were set up in the last cycle is what he's running out of. So in 1203, he gets his Templar loan. In 1205, we switch to Earth, and then he starts falling. So in 1207, then those loans are started to take over into the system. King John dies after the Magna Carta immediately, but he wanted to declare that anything that was signed in Westminster was actually a decree from him, as if it's coming from his mouth. So that's when we have this whole Westminster issue, where Westminster starts dictating, and we've got the king, and then we've got the lords, and over 100-year period, they're trying to define the rights of the people when it comes to a corrupt ruler. And then at the same time, we've got like a shift in power, so that people, starting with the lords and the barons, have more of a say of what goes on, and then it runs down over 100 years to just the common folk, so that we take away that state of you're not born a slave to the baron, but they switch it over in the next 800 years to how you're created a slave by your birth certificate. So it starts with, in 1207, the first forced loans in Venice. This is when Genghis Khan starts rampaging through from the east as well. And then we've got in 1397, the Medici Bank is established after so many Venetian banks have been established. And in the year 1402, we've got the Malacca state established here in this part of the world, in Malaysia, or what was then known as Nusantara. And then immediately we've got the Ming dynasty taking their ships and conquering all kinds of ports from the east. So we've got in the year 1402, in the year 1403, immediately after Malacca is established as a major port that distributes gold, all kinds of like spices and things. It's all traded from there. It was more powerful than Venice. It had more money than Venice. It had more gold than Venice. But as soon as it was realized, Admiral Cheng Ho comes in from China, from the Ming dynasty, and he starts to want to take over administration of ports and things like that. So then we've got Admiral Cheng Ho, and in 1403, we've got the quarantine in Venice because they have a plague. So you can see some similarities. In 1406, we get King James I, and then we get a whole new bunch of politics around who's got rights in England, the lion, the unicorn, the whole of like the Westminster and all of that, and the Bible. And then it all shifts again, and the Medici family are then become the official papacy bankers. And then we have the siege of Constantinople, and Byzantium falls. Yep. So it's all of the former powers fall around the world. So it's not just like one system, it's all the systems around the world that have been established, all come down around the same era. And it starts to, it's like a domino effect, but it's kicked off by the conjunction shifting into air, and it all starts to topple. And then we have this whole cycle, like none of those power players are in today's system, but we have this new one which has come out of that. So now we're going to have all the powers that are in place right now. So it's like the World Bank, the economic forums, the UN, all of these people who are in power all end up with the exact same fates. They can't hold it. So even when they try, they can't hold it. So either they go bankrupt, or they get taken over, or somebody sees like somebody else comes in,
or they try to pull
apart,
a reset.
Yeah, they're all trying to do those things, but those are all desperate actions. Now, that also makes me think that perhaps this whole COVID-19 was nothing to do with them, how it came about. It may have come about by accident just to help bring them down. So you've got to look at that bigger picture. They might not have created it. They may have just tried to ride upon it to make it work out their way.
Here's a tool.
They may have had to utilize it. Yeah. It may have come about naturally. And it may be for helping to create a fall down of the whole system. So whichever way you look at it, you've got to be really open-minded, because if you're not, you will miss a lot of that bigger picture, and you might not see so I don't think we're going to have the system of democracy for much longer. And I think that democracy in its essence was probably thought about as something good, but in its practice it can't be. And it doesn't mean that any other system is better. What it means is that systems itself have to all come down. So these things will change everything. So it will never be the same. And we'll look at it as a chapter of history that was what the fuck chapter of history, It's not going to be how are we going to see a new president sitting, in the White House. We're going to be looking at that White House as a relic of the old the old system.
There's a great meme going around at the moment. My daughter posted it to me, sent it to me. If you guys know memes, you know the character I'm talking about. It's the Goofy, and this is I'll fucking do it again. And it was in the 1700s, whatever the date was, Canadians got pissed off, marched down to fucking Washington and burned down the White House. And then it's the Goofy thing saying, you keep this shit up, I'll do it fucking again. It's time for the Canadians to perhaps, here's the thing. It's interesting that you bring up the Magna Carta. And then we bring up again this switch on the system, which is again that same trying to renew this system, because the Magna Carta, as everyone likes to push it as, it was common law. Common law, we got to push it. The Magna Carta was for the barons, and it was for the merchant princes, and it was for the bankers who were freed men. We were not freed men. All of us here, no one here on this call, no one listening to this video, unless you happen to be a lord, would have been considered a freed man. The Magna Carta has absolutely nothing to do with every single person living in the country. It never did. And in the same way, when we look at the system that scrolled in after World War I with the birth certificates, etc., it made that slavery 2.0, whereas the average person through their birth certificate, the straw man, etc., was turned into a corporation who could then be owned and controlled. We watch the cycles come through, and it's as they change it up. But in reality, it's just that repeating cycle goes through again. I always use the analogy: same girl, different party dress, right? And this is what we have been seeing. The difference is, and of course, my opinion. Obviously, I didn't live back in 1100s that I can remember. So, in my opinion, the difference is that we're seeing it this time. It's being made very, very fucking transparent to everyone that this shit does not work. And they're pushing for this grand reset. They're pushing for this grand reset because they have to. The banking system's empty. The banking system, all the corporations, all the banking system, it's completely decimated. It's empty. They need to reset what they want in their cycle. They need to reset their cycle in a way that they think they can continue it. Are they going to be able to?
Well, if you look at Klaus Schwab's biography, he set up this World Economic Forum in 1971, which is the exact same year that the money system was backed by the dollar, which was backed by oil. So that whole system also comes down, because 1971 is part of this picture as well. It's part of the I can't remember, Saturn, Pluto cycles. And Jupiter, you see, all of this is about Pluto being in Capricorn, and every planet that has part of this Capricorn Pluto energy, it's been touching this, it's been squaring. You remember when Aries was squaring Pluto back in 2012 to 2016, when Aries, Uranus was squaring Pluto from Aries. This is when we started to see Pluto's major positioning in the, it wasn't just a financial crash that happened in 2008, because that is just Jupiter and Pluto, but Pluto's journey through Capricorn is all about the system. And the first major square to it was coming from Uranus, which shook up everything. We had that big eclipse in 2016 over America, and it was still Uranus square. Uranus was still square Pluto over that period, and it just went on and on and on. And every time it made an exact, there were, I think, 5 hits. Every time it made an exact hit, there was another level, like the WikiLeaks was coming out, or there was like a whole, you know, if you go back, and
Panama
then you
Papers.
see like all the drops of like Panama Papers, all of that stuff. And then we saw the elections of 2016 in the US. And there you kick off one side of that journey of Pluto. And then this year in 2020, it's not about the Uranus square anymore, but it's because all of these planets were coming through to kind of lock in what Pluto's job is. He doesn't break down everything just for the hell of it. He breaks it down because the foundation needs to come out. So it's the rotted. Foundation of a castle is a huge building, and this is the castle. Yeah, this is the castle of our society, and these are the people who are running it. Now, if there are people in there that don't belong in there, they will be spared. But if there are people who are really part of the bricks and mortar of that castle, they're coming down with it. So your tower card, Danny, that you've kind of made the poster of this show about is really, that's the castle that we're looking at. It's
that's the foundation.
Tower of Babel. Yeah. It's Nimrod's system falling apart. So it's really about that. Yeah. I talk too much. Let other people
Amina, I'd like to ask you a question tying into the stuff that you were just talking about and with the birth certificates, because this has been on my mind a lot lately with the birth certificates and the legal name fraud and all that. Do you think that's why the stay-at-home orders are happening? Because our owner countries want us to stay at home so they can collect off of us longer, because they're trying to grasp every last cent that they can out of these collapsing financial systems?
Very much so. I mean, the whole trying to reset is all because they want to move the financial system over to what some say could be the Great Reset, could be economically about changing the value of each and every country's currency and giving a basic income and all of that. But that's still part of the system that created the birth certificates. That whole system began in 1205. It began then, and it got more solid as it went over. So it's an 800-year cycle from being serfs to being debt slaves and
exactly.
birth certificates. So the serfs were just serfs because they were born on a lord's land, nothing to do with any paperwork.
Yeah,
that's the first cycle. The next cycle is it's about the paperwork. And then when that all falls apart, it's going to be different. Now, we can't say that we're all going to be free, but the planets do show that there are a lot more hope for us now than there was hope back then for people. And I still talk too much, sorry.
I want to jump in here because this is important when we talk about the reset thing, right? This is an important piece. We know that in the last 10 years, there have been multiple filings. There have been multiple things that have been done purportedly to free us from the paperwork slavery. Let's just call that part. The paperwork aspect of the slavery, the ownership of our fictional paper IDs. There's been quite a few things like this put forward. And one of the things that's been talked about multiple times, especially since 2016, is this feeling of like, kind of like the prison door is open and we have to step outside it. That we have the freedom to step outside it. We just have to figure out what that looks like. But the fact that they, the quintessential they, will close that door again. So when I see this great reset that everyone's talking about, this whole financial reset, and one of the things that I talked about on a show a couple of weeks ago was that so-called whistleblower out of Canada saying that they were going to wait until spring, i.e. keep everyone in lockdown as much as you can. So people are absolutely desperate. They're broke. Businesses have gone bankrupt. Everyone is into a level of desperation that they will then accept the new system that they want to roll out, i.e. they'll do like a debt forgiveness, etc. What you won't realize is that you're also signing off the ownership of your home. So your mortgage will be forgiven, but you will no longer really truly own your home anymore. All these things could possibly happen, but it would be signing, the moment you sign that dotted line into that, you are then signing yourself back into that debt slave system. You are accepting the terms and conditions they've given you. And that's,
to be honest, Danny, I don't think that whether you sign it or you don't sign it is going to make any difference, because this is the last ditch attempt to keep the system going.
Absolutely.
But
I agree. Amina, I 100% agree. It can't go, because they're just trying to repeat the same thing. And I've talked about for years the remirroring of the financial system. And each time they do that, it's taking a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. And each time they remirror it or reset it, when you've taken 100 photocopies of a photocopy, it ends up, there's nothing left in it, right? It fades away till there's nothing. And the system is empty now. They can try to, under their same stipulations of control, under their same control structures, that's what they want to do, because they want to stay in power. They want to stay the ones calling the shots. But the system's empty. It can't be repeated, and it's not going to be repeated. There's no they can pretend, they can try, but it's going to fail, because there is no energy left in that system. None. Not even the dregs are left. They're not even running on fumes.
When you try and initiate this kind of thing at the end of a Saturn Jupiter conjunction cycle in Earth, and you start with a losing battle, because there's no way. You see, this astrology shows that the universe is predominantly fair in some respects, because everybody has their time. Everybody has their limits in time to be the ones that, so it may start with some great intention from, say, maybe the very first Medici family people were actually probably thinking along the right track, but greed takes over eventually, because we are talking about a whole cycle of humanity, and it's humanity's base personality traits that come out through, what happens when someone's given power. Do they do good with it or not? And this is where, like, the astrology shows us that, everyone gets their chance. And although we only live through a fraction of that big picture, we do see that, like, the pattern shows that the chance is now ending. Sorry, we've got to move on now, because we have to go to the next cycle. So the next one,
cycle, please.
Get a chance. And yeah, next cycle, please. And do we want money? I mean, is that the bottom line? Do we really want money anymore? Because money's really created quite a lot of problems, especially our value system of what we call, like, valuable in the workplace, valuable industry, valuable, all of these things, like artists haven't been valued at all, have they? Unless they're one of the select few, but people are born to do art. So what happens to them? They have to do their art, but they need to work.
That's
everybody
the
needs
change.
to work. Why is that? All of these things, because you need to buy a house.
That's the
Why can't you
change
build a
that needs,
house?
because money is not evil, right? Like, this is the whole thing, as I always say, money is not
No.
evil. There's nothing wrong with money. Money is just a piece of paper and some coins. Here you go. I got it's just a coin. That's all money is it's just a coin, and it's a piece of paper that you use. It is the calculation of value. It is how that money is used and distributed and controlled. That is when we get into the whole thing of, and that takes the change. Therein is the change. It's what you were just saying. When there needs to be a complete change, some asswipe stockbroker who sits on his computer and makes $500 billion a year and is a useless human being, versus an artist or a musician or an incredible teacher or an incredible nurse or a farmer, and they struggle. Therein is the problem of the system. The system, that allotment of assigning value to what someone does according to really twisted and warped systems that don't make sense. But that's what we're seeing now,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's part of that transparency of what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the fact of people are standing up and going, even in the lockdown, looking at that lockdown, as we've talked about, it's given people a lot of opportunity to sit there and discover that they like to draw, or they like to play music, or they like to paint teapots. It doesn't matter. They've all of a sudden discovered, I have this, I did this, oh, I love this, I did dry flower arranging, I did whatever the fuck it was, I grew a garden, oh my God, I love this. How do I turn this into a way of supporting myself and my family? It's opened the questions up to people. People are now starting to go, but okay, but or even more so, they start trading around within their community and go, I grew tomatoes and I traded tomatoes for apples with my next door neighbor. Oh, that was fantastic. Can I do that again? Now, who can I trade something else with? Barter, etc. It opens up the concepts that they've never thought of, that they never thought were possible.
Like Merce said in the chat, like, even doctors could be amazing. You know, it's just
if they were allowed to.
They're stuck in that system too.
Exactly. Okay, guys, you're gonna laugh. We've been at this for an hour and a half already. Somehow along the lines, I think I've lost an hour, because it sure as fuck doesn't feel like 90 minutes. I want to just focus for this last little bit of what do we have? What are we going to be seeing over the next? I know we've touched on it, because I want to talk about the grand conjunction on the 21st, because that is like, everyone's like, oh, what the fuck is that? From now until that first week of January, what are we going to start? What are these kinds of things that are coming in? Specifically, talk to me about this grand conjunction happening on the 21st. That speaks to me right there of like, here's a twist to your cycles. Like, pachoom. Go ahead, Jules. Talk to me.
It's going to be the twist.
Okay, so Jupiter and Saturn are termed the great chronocrators. They're the timekeepers. So Amina was saying they happen every 20 years. It's part of a 800 plus year cycle. But I've been following this guy called Theodore White and a few astrometeorologists. And the Sun, Jupiter and Saturn also determine climate cycles and grand minimum cycles.
I wanted to talk about this. Yay.
A Milankovitch cycle. And I was actually just trying to find the bit, and I haven't actually been able to find it. But basically, when Jupiter and Saturn meet with the Sun, it's a barocentric sort of motion. And this time being the first time in Aquarius, it actually conjuncts the fixed star Altair. So I'll read a little bit about it, and then you can make of it as you will. So the constellation Aquila has been recognized as a bird for the last 3,500 years and has been associated with fire, lightning, and sun gods. So the Greeks claimed this eagle as a form of Zeus, god of thunder and lightning. It's also a Roman custom to release eagles over the funeral pyres of emperors, for they believed the eagle would carry the soul of the warrior to the land of the immortals. The eagle was seen as an instrument for calling fire down from heaven, and the spirit or soul, having passed through the sacrificial fire, was borne away by the eagle. So Altair is associated with boldness and action, but this boldness is also connected to human relationships and caring. So we're talking about being self-sufficient, but on a meteorological kind of level, it's talking about severe changes in temperature, like severe drops in temperature, increased cloud cover, increased lightning, increased flooding this time around.
Oh, that's fucking
being the first time in
interesting.
the sign of air. So if someone else can just jump in for a second, there's another bit I want to read out.
Megan,
when I find it.
Megan, what was it you were just saying here? I'm just trying to read your note. Interesting to note that this grand conjunction is at 0 Aqua. What's Aqua?
Aquarius.
Aquarius. Okay.
So just kind of tying in, with what Amina was saying about the things falling down. In 769, we had the exact opposite point for the conjunction at 0 Leo, and that was the height of Charlemagne's. Like that was like the peak where he was like taking over like the Franks. Like that was like his big time. So we're seeing the opposite. It's not like these big dominant powers coming and taking over. They're falling.
The falling.
And it's interesting what Jules was just saying about the Ice Age, because for the last several years, whenever I think post 2020, I picture cold. And Aquarius is very cold, and Capricorn is very cold, and
the reason I find this interesting is because, like I said, I've been very, very deep down the rabbit hole again of looking at the geomagnetic, looking at the cosmic rays coming in, et cetera, and made a comment earlier about COVID. There is a large question, and I've discussed it a lot, of whether or not these symptoms of COVID-19 are in fact the symptoms that people are experiencing through the cosmic rays that are coming in. Is it being caused by these kinds of things? Okay, Amina, the whole mink coat thing, that takes on a new thing when you look at what's going on in Denmark, right? We're seeing the signs. There's a lot of people who are talking that something is about to happen. Something is about to happen. Now, if we talk about the fact of these guys know, and these guys in the know, and they follow the astrology and the numerology, etc., and they can see this, is that a preparation? That was been my question for the last year, is everything that we've seen with the COVID, these lockdowns, is people are preppers now. Everyone's turned into a prepper, right? Anyone who can is stored up on toilet paper. They've stored up, or they've bought extra jam and extra peanut butter, and they've got extra canned goods. They've got extra. It was the perfect preparation to get the public aware that they have to play a role in their own responsibilities, right? Of like, being prepared, making sure you have extra food on hand, making sure you have extra first aid shit like that on hand. So I find that really interesting. And Amina, due to COVID, a mink coat, it has just been announced that Denmark and I think Sweden are killing millions of minks because they've discovered that they've got COVID. And to stop the COVID that could be transmitted to humans, so therefore to stop that, to stop a second wave, they're killing several million minks. Which makes no fucking sense. Like, I mean, you're talking about like, really? What average person actually has a mink pet? Not because you can't catch COVID from a coat, right? So, anyway. Yeah, 17 million minks are to be culled in Denmark. this is that thing of like insanity, like I've said, that people are literally saw that and just went, in order to stop COVID from spreading, you're going to kill 17 million minks because there's a chance they could get COVID and give it to humans. It's insanity. It's insanity. And the people are just, what? It doesn't make sense. Did you find that Jules is still looking? I can see her searching away.
I'm still looking.
Okay, so there's
and I've
also,
nearly
like,
got it. So hang on.
16,
Yeah.
in the 1600s, we had a massive major, what was it?
Ice Age.
Sun cycle where
Yep.
it was extremely cold. Yeah, it's 1600s though, when the River Thames froze over and everyone was freezing and the fur trade just took off. So power and wealth was all destroyed except for those who could get furs. So fur became the next trade. It was the biggest trade around that time. And so everyone was wearing fur. And I'm just finding it odd that like the whole like pole shift stuff and the magnetosphere and the sun cycles and the grand solar minimum all seem to be culminating around minks being cold. You know, how convenient is that? It's weird, isn't it?
And don't group together, because, you know, people can combine. They can, you know, share their resources. They can stay warm together. Don't do that.
Don't
Stay
do that.
apart.
No. Stay apart. Yeah.
And rely on the big box chain stores, because COVID knows when you're shopping at Target versus at a mom and pop store.
Yeah, apparently. It's insane, right? Like, this is the things that we have talked about, and you get people who've commented for years, of course, that Hollywood is releasing all these is used as a propaganda machine, almost as a future prophecy machine in some ways. But I go back to that whole thing of when you look at the way these pieces, like the bit about the minks, culling 17 million minks over COVID, and then you sit there and go like, this has got to be a simulation. Do you know what I mean? Like, my head sits there and goes, there's somebody who's writing this story. So exactly. This week, remember the 5th of November. Does anyone know what year V for Vendetta took place? Give you one guess.
2020.
2020 is the year that the movie V for Vendetta takes place. When you have those, you sit there and go like, the play out. When you go read the synopsis, if you haven't seen the movie V for Vendetta, what rock have you been hiding under? Number one, I have big questions. Number two, you need to go watch it. Even though we're past the 5th of November, go watch it. When you read they give you a synopsis of the storyline. Just read the synopsis of the storyline. It is now. It is what is playing out right now, but not on an English stage, on a global stage. It is exactly playing out. And I sat there and I reposted when V makes the big speech and takes over the airwaves, and he says, I will meet you here in 1 year. Next year on the 5th of November, meet me on the streets and we will take back this country type thing. And I'm sitting there going, okay, November 5th, 2021. Is this the date? Like, I don't know. Maybe someone needs to quickly look at what planets and what systems are in play on that date, because everything else is playing out according to the movie. Just saying.
May I say something, Danny?
Sure.
What if V is Q?
No.
That's what
Don't even. No.
made me think.
No.
I'm just saying.
No. Sorry, darling. No. Q is a fucking psyop. And we're about to see that psyop play out big time on the American stage. I can guarantee it.
Hey, Danny.
Yeah, darling.
Mr. MBB333 just posted 25 minutes ago that a giant solar storm is turning directly towards planet Earth.
Oh, I hate to be prophetic and shit, but
yeah, that's
I don't know.
interesting.
Like I said, my gut has been in full-on prepper mode. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was like, as they announced the next British lockdown, I fucking went out on Monday and I went and bought more canned food and I bought more dried food. Shit is getting real.
Danny,
Yeah, darling.
you said about the 5th of November next year.
Yeah.
We're going to be coming off of a new moon in exact opposition to Uranus, the Scorpio new moon.
So what does that mean?
I'm not 100% sure. It's a start of something new. I mean, that's like the timing of the news. But, you know, it's Uranus is the people. There's also going to be a square to Saturn. I think things aren't magically going to get better. I think there's going to be, you know, maybe because this is Scorpio, and Scorpio is Mars is going to be there. You're going to have Mercury just leaving Libra. The nodes are very close to switching onto that Scorpio-Taurus axis because they'll be at 1 degree of the axis they're on. Maybe this is like a moment of darkness in the revolution where we have to remember that we're in it together and that we are rising above, because it is like the future is worth fighting for, and we do have to rise up out of this darkness that we've been mired in for 800 years to build something better. Because as Amina was saying about the 1200s, well, there was a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 1284, and the nodes were where they were this time, but flipped. So we're not being stuck into this Capricornian bullshit anymore. We're being set free, but we have to break free. And earlier you were talking about the cage and how the door is going to swing shut. Well, that door has been open, but cages are comfortable, especially when you have a keeper coming and bringing you food and bringing you, like, a cage can look like a hotel room if you treat it the right way, if you have the, you know, the proper room service. So it's about people being uncomfortable enough to walk out into that great unknown, which is scary and vulnerable as fuck. And Scorpio energy is all about facing those fears and those vulnerabilities.
And Uranus actually just pulls you out of that. So whether you want that change or not, it's going to break it down for you. It's going to throw you out of the cage.
It's better to embrace change right now rather than to fight against it, because if you fight against it, you know, it escalates into the worst scenario. But if you embrace change and you adapt and you're happy to see the way forward, no matter what happens, you know, it's a much easier way of dealing with the energies. Because if everybody in the whole world didn't want to embrace change, then we get those kinds of things happen. Destiny takes over, and it's earthquakes like the 1275 earthquake in the UK. I mean, that tore down buildings, tore down the church that was on top of Glastonbury Tor. They had to build something else instead. So it was like, you know, these are the times when we see major things can happen. And if we don't want to embrace the ability to allow it to happen ourselves by breaking it down, breaking our systems down, then they get.
As you're saying that, Amina, I'm picturing like the little kids at daycare playing with the cornstarch in the water. And when they try to like punch it, they just can't get through. But when they go soft and easy, they penetrate and they go through. And I think with all the Scorpio energy that we're going on right now, it's easy to like penetrate and see what's going on beneath the surface, as long as you don't come at it too hard. And we can't come at it too hard because we don't have that oomph from Mars right now. And, you know, as we're talking about this, we mentioned the Tower card earlier, and the Judgment card came up, you know, with the connection to Pluto. And, you know, Uranus, the Fool. It's about, you know, taking that leap of faith.
What's that First Nations prophecy where you've got to let go of the paddle out into the river and just go with the flow?
Yeah.
That's exactly it. You've just got to flow with the change. You can't fight against it. You're going to be swept away.
Aside
Well, we're human beings. We have to be. We have to be in the change instead of resisting against it, because that's what we're here. We're to be and to experience these energies and work with
Yeah,
them.
for the last 30 years, I've had a vision in my mind that I can't get rid of at all. It pops into my mind again and again. It's the same face, and it's a Native American chief who is ruling America. And this is nothing to do with astrology aside, but from 1990s till now, I see this guy's face, and it's a very intuitive thing, but it's this Native American chief who is like the way out, and he is pretty much like a, and there's no president. That's what I've been seeing for 30 years, and I'm not an American, so I don't know why, but
like going back to the original stewardships. It's not owners, it's about the stewards and the keepers and the protectors. And I think that's part of what's going on with this Mars retrograde within all these cycles. It's like the old way of like the Mars energy is like aggressively thrusting after what you want, but it's more about being like the guardian and the protector.
Yeah.
And that's where that energy needs to go.
As people are waking up, and we're seeing more and more people become aware, and there is we've talked about this for years, that stages of grief, right? People wake up and you see it, they have a reaction when all of a sudden they come face to face with what's really going on, and they go through, it's like those stages of grief. There's anger, they're angry, and then there's that deep gut-wrenching sadness of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? It's all lost. Oh, we can't do anything. And then they have to slowly climb out of that. I know the temptation is there for those of us who've been doing this fucking shit for years, if not decades, to want to be in the forefront of the marches with the pitchforks and the torches and want to tear it all fucking down. My own opinion here, that's not our role. Our role is to be the stewards, to be the guardians. And in this way, being the guardians of the information, being there to support these people as they're going through these massive climactic wake up moments and absorbing all of this shit in weeks and months instead of like the rest of us who've been at this for fucking years. We are going to have to be the calm. We're going to have to be the ones who are there to knit, to re-knit a shattered population back together. And it's going to be, that's going to be, I see is like our job is to be the ones who are bring people together, help expose in that way that you were talking about, Megan, and not with the screaming pitchforks, but explaining the division, explaining all the separation stuff that's going on, and bringing people back together. And it's going to be upon us to do that. That's our role. Our role is not to be holding the pitchforks and the torches. That's going to be the role of the people who are going through the screaming anger, etc. That is what they're going to be doing. We don't need more of that. We need more of the calm pressure that just keeps pushing everyone forward, gently, keep pushing things forward.
So what would you say to yourself back in 2017? Because I know we've been going through this shit for years, and Unfuckers has been around since 2015. What would you say to yourself now, knowing what you know now compared to then?
Hold on to your fucking hat. No, you know what? It just be prepared. It's the same as what we're going through now, and more so just being like, don't get a preconceived notion of what it's going to look like. Don't hold on to any kind of a narrative of what you think is going to play out, how you think it's going to look as it plays out. Because whatever you think or whatever preconceived notion you have, I think is going to end up getting thrown out the window. And the people who are going to be able to bob on the surface with the waves are going to be those who have gotten rid of as many of those narratives and belief structures and preconceived notions of what everything is and how it is going to be. If you can get rid of that, those are the ones who are going to float the easiest, who are going to be able to follow along and, like you say in the stream, be able to get in the canoe and go with the flow and remain above the flow, not drown in the flow. And I think the people who have the preset ideas, the programming, the narratives, the belief structures, they're the ones who are going to have the most trouble. They're the ones who are going to have the hardest time, because they will be continuously swimming against the stream if it doesn't flow in the direction they expect it to flow in. Yeah, there's no canoe. There is no canoe. There's no spoon, and there's no canoe either.
No, that's really good, Danny. I think astrology, we can't really tell fortunes or predict the future. We can only tell you what the energies are. And it's just a reflection of what happens, or what's happening.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of unknowns. We're not out of the woods yet. With Jupiter, Saturn coming together in Aquarius in January, I mean, there's a 3 to 4 year lead up to that. So we're already seeing that change now, but that's just going to keep going into 2022, 2023. But we will see some massive changes, yes, because we've had so many changes of cycles and ingresses into other signs with the outers. So we will see that change, but we're not out of the woods yet.
It's like you're saying, Jules, like we can see that there's change coming, but we can't see how it looks. But we have to remember that Uranus represents the future. And as long as we guide ourselves with our own inner authority, just like Danny was saying, like we use our own inner authority to calmly lead the way forward instead of reaching for some outer authority to give us a false sense of security and control, then we know that we'll arrive there sometime. And with Uranus and Taurus, it's remembering that it is worth it to go forward. And it sounds like a pipe dream, but it will be better, but it may not be easy. And just to not lose your own way as we make our own way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, like you were saying, Megan, it may not be easy, but I think those that will find it the easiest, again, are going to be those who are not fighting through their own belief structures. But I think the more things that you are intent on it's going to be this way, it has to look that way, this is what this recent, and we come into that whole thing again, like ascension and all of these new age type movements, etc. However that is, they have a very firm picture of what it will be, and when it doesn't flow that way, those are the ones who are going to struggle the most, because it is a narrative that they're following that is not necessarily leading the way everything's going. If that makes sense.
It's because it's fluid. The future is fluid. It's not set in stone yet. There's the overall tapestry of the bigger picture, but each individual is the nuance.
Yep.
And it all ties together.
Yep, I agree. So coming up next, mass insanity on Yule. That'll be interesting on the 21st. We'll see how that plays out. Shall we schedule another astrology show for the first week of January? Or do you think we're going to need it before then? Or are we going to need to do it like let's see. Hold on. Let's look at dates here.
Let's see what happens this Friday and the 13th, because there may be a quick shift of things, you know, like you may want to call before January another show because of what happens between this Friday and
I reckon whatever's going to blow up will happen by the 13th, not necessarily on the
13th.
13th. It's going to be a lead up. It will probably just be the culmination on the 13th. So
stay at home, stay in bed, don't go anywhere, make no plans.
Yeah. No, just live and just watch what happens. Watch the show. Grab your popcorn and we'll come back.
Be on the outside watching it, because you don't want to be a player in it. Just step back, just look at it. I mean, do what you want,
observe,
but look at it. You know, it's out there. I mean, all of this is going to teach us huge lessons about ourselves. Take those lessons in, digest them any way you like, go with the flow. Nothing needs to affect you personally. Everyone's living in so much fear because we've been taught that way, because of our situation being in the end of this whole Capricorn journey. We're still going through Capricorn till what, like 2023 or beyond, like 2024. We're still going through it. We're going to watch things falling down between now and then. But look how 2020 has shifted everything. 2017, we were already frustrated with status quo systems, governments, everyone, nothing works the way we anticipate or hope. We can't change anything. And look how much can change in a very short space of time.
Yes.
And doesn't that give you hope? Doesn't that give you hope? Now sit back and watch the show.
Yeah, it's not up to us to judge the process. It's not up to us to judge it. It's just up to us to observe it. And if you think about it, one of the higher elevations of Libra is judgment. It is like that grand judge that is like, okay, like this is just or not. And the last Saturn-Pluto conjunction was in Libra. And Mercury right now, as it's starting to gain speed, is on that exact same degree of 27 degrees Libra. So we are going to see the judgment of what is worthy of standing the test of time and not rippling forward. We're going to see the big blow-ups with Mars. And it's not for us to get wrapped up in the shit show.
We're living in...
It's to hold space, right?
It might be painful. It might be hard. It might be, you know, but I think it's a life worth living to be around right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I reckon we should definitely get together prior to Christmas.
Yes, I think so too.
The eclipses are going to be wild.
When does the eclipses start?
You guys think pre-eclipse? The 30th through the 14th. So should we do pre or during? Maybe.
Wait, 30th of December?
Those eclipses are going to be fucking November. No, like we're coming up on it quick.
Okay.
And these are mutable eclipses. So big changes.
Oh, eclipse season gives me a headache.
As long as they're not on your pivot points, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I've just had all the cardinal ones, and
I feel like I've had to pivot so much.
Over.
I'm like a drunken ballerina about to fall into the orchestra pit. Seriously.
Yeah, I need to go out. I got some shit. I'm going to have to talk to you girls about what's coming up because wow. Okay, the four of us will figure out when we're going to do the next show, and I will let you guys all know ASAP. Before we go, I have a couple of things I want to say. So first of all, unfuckersunite.com, the website is up and running. We had a problem, as you may know, with software deciding in Mercury retrograde, the software wouldn't work. We had to change the software. So we've got a lot of people who cannot get in. The reason why is when you signed up under the old software, the new software has changed your monthly payment to manual instead of being automatic. So technically it's expired. It's suspended your account. You need to go in and change the payment from manual to automatic. I'm still trying to figure out, we've tried to figure out a way for us to be able to do it from the back, but of course it's payment systems. They won't let us change your payment system, right? So this is something, and we're going to try and work out maybe a step-by-step process to walk people through of exactly how to make sure to change that. We now have Unfuckers Unite is up and running smoothly. We're going to be adding little bits and pieces, and as I add little bits of software, I guarantee I'll crash it, and then I'll fix it again, or Penny will fix it for me. But it is up and running. We now have a live chat on it, so you can chit chat with everyone if you want. We have the Astrology 2.0 group is in Unfuckers Unite. So you can come in and we can all go, what the fuck was that? And hopefully one of the lovely ladies will be able to calm us down when we start losing our shit again. I will be closing, and I keep saying it, I'm warning everyone, is now hardcore. Barring any other tech issues, I will be closing on all of the Facebook groups in a week. So be prepared. They're all closing. So the only people who will get the Zoom link to be here live will be those who are members of Unfuckers Unite. The videos will still be going out on YouTube as they normally do, but that's the way it's going to be. As a little extra push for me, we now have Facebook is now got their moderators in the Unfuckers Unite group, and they are going through and taking posts and making them, they have to be approved. So 2 days ago, I had to personally approve 16 different posts from like 10 different people. Yesterday was another 17 posts. Today, this morning, after doing the 17 posts that I had to personally approve, I had 6 more. There could be another 5 or 6 now, because they are now arbitrarily deciding what can and cannot be posted within the Facebook groups. Done. I'm fucking done. I'm not doing this shit anymore. So this is your heads up. In 1 week's time, I'm closing all of the Facebook groups. They will all be archived. And if you want to attend the Zoom, etc., you're going to have to become a member of Unfuckers Unite, because that's where we're taking the conversation to. And that's it. That's it. I want to thank you guys, Amina and Jules and Megan, for staying up late and getting up early and being here. And we'll again, we will decide on the next one really soon. We'll sit down with all our schedules and figure out what's going to work for all of us. I will see everyone Monday for the Unfuck It discussion, and I have a feeling it will be a very, very lively discussion on Monday. Okay, I see you guys later. Ciao, everyone. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.